Everybody in the gaming community wants games to fail. It's very bizarre. Nadeshot, I guess a middling to famous, but sort of long-term streamer, gaming YouTuber, gaming Twitcher, sort of one of those people that gets around, I guess, on the video end of pop culture, right? He calls out gaming fans for negativity on the new games, right? Well, we'll get into his clips down here. We'll listen to what he has to say here. We'll go through it. But what I want to first address is a lot of people are sort of looking at these new games as sort of the evolution of what gaming is supposed to become, right? Like you've heard of BodyCam, the game that kind of has your POV as like down here, over here on the left breast, if you will, where like a body camera usually would be located on a uniformed officer or soldier. They usually don't do the helmet cams. That was kind of an early Iraq war thing, but they've just moved down here to the chest. Now, I could be wrong. There could be active duty that wear them up on their helmets still, but as I remember, that was just too shaky. There was just way too much, especially in a running situation. Things are moving around too much, so it was located down here like it is on the police officers. But I digress. It's a very realistic-looking game, very realistic sound effects. Of course, the body reacts in very realistic ways. You can only take so many shots before you're completely incapacitated, and these aren't like body shots. If you take, I think, like 2 shots to the chest, you're done. And this is, again, like you're wearing body armor, so the first one drops you, right? So it's a very realistic kind of game, right? And a lot of people have the impression that games are just supposed to progressively become more visually dazzling, I guess, right? And I think that's mostly the people who support Sweet Baby Inc. are sort of more interested in the visual spectacle of the game. But as we learned earlier, I think it was with Konami that put out a poll that they took of their customers that wanted to respond. A lot of gamers, and feel free to let us know down in the comments too. We'll do our own poll here, okay? So let us know down below. Do you think it's important that a video game looks really, really cool? Or do you think it's important that the game is fun, right? Consider this, like you have the Mega Man games, and really, when you tear Mega Man down, he's just a guy with a blaster for an arm that goes around blasting holes in other robots. Cyborgs, if you prefer, right? So let's just tear that down. It's a very basic-looking game. I believe it's 16-bit, and it could be less. I could be 8-bit, too. I'm not sure. I remember it being sophisticated. I could be remembering Mega Man X and placing over the original Mega Man sprite over it by accident. I don't know. You'll have to correct me below on that one, too. But remember, this was a very thrilling game, and it had less graphic capability than the phone in your pocket, okay? The phone perhaps you're watching this video on, okay? And so, picture that, and how thrilling and exciting that was with the absolute basic kind of layout of things. The original Zelda game and sort of things like that. Now, go up against a game that's like Battlefield, that's like Modern Warfare 3, or the latest Bethesda game that just came out there, the Starfield, that has this very expansive sort of world, is very dazzling to look at, pronouns, a lot to offer in the way of the experience of going through the game, right? The actual activity inside of the game is sort of, it's left to your taste, right? It's left to your taste. The challenge of the game is more over in what you choose to make out of it versus a full frontal experience like Mega Man and Zelda, right? And this is what I'm pointing to, is that the visual experience of the gamer is prioritized by these newer corporations, the SBI, Sweet Baby Inc. friendly corporations that want to like deliver something that looks incredibly realistic. And yet it kind of falls away. So I think Death Stranding is probably a really good example of this. Kojima wanted to make a movie. There's no mistaking that. Daryl Delivers, aka Death Stranding, is supposed to be a movie or like a Netflix series. But unfortunately, they decided to stuff a video game in the middle of it where you deliver packages in the apocalypse. Okay, with a baby, an unborn baby, strapped to your gut. In case, for whatever reason, a giant pool of shark oil attacks you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look the trailer up for that thing. It is like a total acid trip, and a bad acid trip, okay? And that's a good example of like visually stunning, very, very pleasing, especially in the sound design. I remember when we were going through it was great. I love the movie, so I watched the full QuickTime events, cutscenes, stuff like that that's been compiled into a movie. I watched that. It's like 9 hours long cutscenes put together for Death Stranding alone, okay? And that's what I'm talking about, is that the visual spectacle, the experience that you're kind of like having in a cinematic function has become the priority to these companies that are pushing like the Sweet Baby Inc. kind of thing. Whereas in the other end of this, sort of the indie end, I guess you might call it, the more simplistic level graphics with a more focused goal seems to be what some gamers prefer. So let us know down in the comments what you think, okay? And that's what I wanted to set up, okay? Because this is the dialogue we're going to have. Nadeshot is convinced that people are just turned off to anything new. If it was made after 1997, they don't want to interact with it, is sort of his mentality about it. Maybe 2007, okay? I'm not that old. I just picture retro gaming a little different than you do because I, again, am not that old, but still kind of old, I guess. Do you consider 35 old? I do. I'm going to be 35 soon, and I think that's, you're not over the hill yet, but you're looking at it. You're coming up to the summit, and you better make a decision soon, right? You're going to get on a hang glider and fly off to retirement, or you're going to go the roller coaster, huh? This is a lot of decision making coming up, right? So I'm a little different on that scale than Nadeshot, who sounds like he's maybe almost 40 as opposed to middle 30s, right? Experiencing this more through the lens that he was excited outside of like GameStop and stuff like that when these original Halo games are coming out. And I remember like being part of that, but I think I was just a little like more Nintendo geared because I was younger than he was at that time, I guess, less engaged with the first person shooter style games and more engaged with how many times you can die in Mario. So let's listen to what he has to say, though. Okay, now that we've set up the argument, let's hear what he has to say.
There's something weird that has happened in the gaming community. I'm serious, too, when I say this. For some reason, everybody in the gaming community they want games to fail. It's very bizarre. Like, the whole thing with X Defiant is still, like, stumps me to this day.
Okay, so X Defiant was a sort of Call of Duty challenger, would be a best way to put it. A lot of people labeled it the Call of Duty killer, right? That it was going to finally dethrone Call of Duty from that first-person kind of like arena-style competition, search and destroy sort of style gaming. It obviously didn't make it there.
People complain about not having enough games to play, but when new games come out, even before they have played it, they're like, that game sucks, I'm not going to play it. Listen, man, if we keep tearing down these studios trying to make good games, like, yeah, not every single one is going to be fun and not every single one is going to be a hit. But if we're sitting here, like, preying on its downfall before the game even comes out, what do you think's going to happen?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. This is the old argument of you haven't played it yet, you haven't tasted it yet, you haven't driven it yet. This is this whole argument of until you go in, until you taste the poo-poo, until you eat the poo-poo, you cannot know that the poo-poo is bad for you, right? This is the logic, right? Unless you eat the poo-poo, you cannot know if the poo-poo is bad for you. No, I'm pretty sure that I can identify poo-poo and stay away from it because it's poo-poo. In fact, that hole is as far away from the intake as it possibly can without being stepped on, okay? It's sat on quite a bit, right? But it's not stepped on, right? It could have been further in the bottom of your foot. How weird would that be, right? How weird would that be if the exit was down on your heel, huh? Right? It was the absolute... Then you could reach it, though. That's the point, right? It's at the end of the tailbone. So we as humans... Didn't that one rock star get his ribs removed so he could reach his pelvis, right? Yeah, so, like, that's what I'm talking about, though, right? Freaky things, You can tell on its face that, like, maybe you don't want to participate in Marilyn Manson's style of body transformation, right? Maybe you can identify from a distance that you don't want to hang out at Burning Man wearing a flammable costume. You don't want to hang out at Burning Man when it's going to rain, right? Remember that, with all the hippies up to their hips in mud? Remember that? There were plenty of RVs, and likely they're still there, having become fused to the lake bed after it rained for enough time to turn the lake bed into a muddy mess, Who would have ever guessed, right? Like a dried up lake bed would one day get some rain. Totally impossible, right? And this is what I'm talking about. You can see on the surface from a distance that things are going to be bad. And now what Nadeshot's trying to do is play that old game of you haven't eat the poo-poo yet. How do you know it's bad for you? Right? And that's what he goes on to talk about here. And you feel the nostalgia as he continues here. Let's get into it.
Nobody's going to be investing in gaming and making new games. And you're not going to have shit to fucking play. You're going to be sitting here playing MW2 Remastered Edition. You're going to be sitting here trying to play fucking the same old games for the 1,000th time because these billionaires and fucking multi-million billion dollar publishers, they're not gonna greenlight any new games, any new concepts, any new IP.
Okay, so what he's talking about is like you see this coming out of Disney now with all the sequels, Toy Story 5, Cars 1,000,000, all this other stuff that's going on. I don't know if there's a Cars sequel. You could bet there is. As long as Owen Wilson and Larry the Cable Guy are alive, there will be Cars content, okay? And so this is what I'm talking about. All these sequels, another Alien movie coming out, sequel, okay? It's not our fault. The corporations have admitted that they don't believe it's safe to experiment with a new idea. Now, what you have to understand is like even games like Starfield are not that revolutionary. They're piling in basically Star Citizen on top of what is traditionally a Bethesda game with a very expansive world where you can visit multiple locations with some lag time between that you call travel, because fast travel is sometimes limited, right? Remember in Skyrim, you pick up a rock and all of a sudden you can't fast travel anymore. And so, I mean, it follows, but I digress. This is what he's talking about, is that he believes that if there's people out here like myself and yourself that are talking about these games not being great before they come out, that the corporations are going to get the idea that you don't want a new idea, that you don't want a new game, that you don't want a new experience, you want an old experience that's been rebuffed, you know? And so what I want to point out is that we have Helldivers, Among Us, we have Animal Party, we have Human Fall Flat. We have so many other games that have sprung out of what effectively is small dev studios and indie studios, right? Especially Among Us. And with the help of YouTubers, of course, right? We see these games explode, okay? So I leave Fortnite out of that. I leave the arena shooters out of that because, again, it's just building out of the they're building out of what the framework of Call of Duty is, whereas Helldivers in particular really focuses on a team dynamic, team goals, working toward a centralized enemy. In fact, that's kind of the controversy right now, is that players are protesting decisions from Helldivers, the dev company behind it, to by allowing like the game to continue to like fail in its goals, right? There's mutiny among the Helldiver players, if you will. And again, you teach them team dynamics and they act in a team way. This is very different than how things work in the Call of Duty shooters, where guys sort of like, they'll all choose a Nicki Minaj skin and go around twerking on top of their enemies, you know? And it just becomes a goofball show of how ridiculous you can make Nicki Minaj look as she in the kill cams, okay? This is a little different in Helldivers, where there is that kind of shenanigans going on, but the skins aren't present, and you still have to work as a team to accomplish a goal or fail at it. And this is where Nadeshot is wrong, okay? So I bring these examples up, is where Nadeshot is wrong about this. We see even Sonic the Hedgehog, right? Sonic Frontiers, I wouldn't argue is a great game, okay? I would argue that they really push the envelope on what you can do with an open world Sonic game, like as open world as you can get with a Sonic game that has rails that you grind on that are just hovering in the middle of the air, attached to nothing. It makes perfect sense, right? Along with a blue hedgehog that can run at Mach 3, okay? So it's clearly a fictional world, right? And they're taking much more liberties with it. They're trying to expand it out to be more esoteric and more like appealing to an older audience than the typical, 8 to 14 that usually Sonic has occupied. It's the same thing with Pokemon. It's sort of like picking more, I wouldn't say aggressive storylines, but they're picking more mature attitudes inside of those storylines and B plots within those storylines as well. And again, Japan's running out of kids, so is the US, so is Canada. The market share of the world is running out of kids, so it's obvious that the push toward adults is simply a reaction to that. So it's nothing directly related to they, them, those people that run everything, okay? Nadeshot over here is telling us that if we're not accepting things like Ubisoft's Star Wars Outlaws, we saw earlier just how fantastic their new offering is. Just take a look at this gameplay. I mean, who doesn't want to play a game where your adversaries stand and wait to be shot? They wait to be like you can just walk right by these characters. They're fully engaged with you like the Metal Gear Solid guards, but unlike those guards, they're waiting for you to kill them first. You think I'm kidding? Watch these stormtroopers. Watch these stormtroopers. Look at this. We got stormtroopers. They are literally looking right at her. They are looking right at her. This guy has to literally get in within her hitbox to notice her. And he still has not shot her, still not shot at her. First shot, second shot, completely missed her at point blank range. Guy in the back still hasn't taken a single shot yet. Okay, and he's watched this all unfold, all right? Here we go, we're still going. She is now down the guy in the back that didn't get a single shot off against her, and now taking down the guy that walked right into her hitbox before noticing her, okay? What's wrong, guys? How come you don't support new games? Why don't you like new games? If you don't like this new stuff, guys, you're just going to end up getting repeat after repeat after repeat. Well, funny you should bring that up. Remember Assassin's Creed Shadows, our favorite Ubisoft offering right now, right? All that historical accuracy they've got going on. Well, there's a problem. Do you notice anything? Yeah, that's Assassin's Creed Odyssey's jumping animation being completely repeated in the trailer for Assassin's Creed Shadows. It features Nawe leaping across the rooftops. Gee, isn't that interesting, You're going to keep playing the same game over and over and over again, guys. How about that? How about that, huh? And see, this is my problem with these guys that say you haven't eaten the poo-poo, how do you know that it's bad for you, okay? But you just make that into a shirt. Let me know down below if you want that to be a shirt. If you don't eat the poo-poo, how can you know it's bad for you? Quote IGN, right? IGN, Nadeshot, whoever we want to falsely attribute it to, right? The internet's just misinformation anyway. But we'll go back to what Nadeshot had to say and listen to what he has to say to close here, okay?
I mean, I try to put myself in the shoes of myself when I was like 16 years old, but I can't. I was excited for new games when they came out.
All right, now I'm pausing it right there. I know that interrupts in mid-statement. Some people don't like that, but I want to attract attention to just how remorseful he sounds, right? I was excited when new games came out. And he's attributing that to being an older man now, and like I said, probably pushing 40, I would guess. I don't know, maybe he gets more sun than me, and that's why he looks older. I don't know. But I would guess that he's kind of like reflecting on how different he is as an adult, instead of noticing that the offerings are not focused toward entertainment anymore. They're, as I said earlier, more cinematic.
The problem is now we have too many options. We've seen too many different games. We've seen too many different ways to interact with games. Like back in the day, bro, in 2007, when Halo 3, Gears of War 1, and Call of Duty Modern Warfare dropped the same fucking year, bro, we were lined up outside of GameStops, whether it was in a mall or attached to a fucking Hollywood Video, sitting there waiting, camped out, drinking fucking Mountain Dew, waiting for these new games.
All right, so again, he's having his nostalgia moment where he remembers the hype around these things. As we just showed you, right? As I just showed you with these examples from Ubisoft alone. This is just Ubisoft by itself with these two games that they can't even give you an experience that engages you. As we showed you, the main character in Star Wars Outlaws the stormtroopers have to enter her hitbox before they notice her, before the red exclamation point you saw in Metal Gear Solid goes off over their heads. That's how bad this has become. So how can we be excited for these games? How can we want to go out and form a line? Furthermore, malls are gone, but let's say the malls are still around. Why would we want to go and form a line, camp out, drink Mountain Dew, eat Doritos until it comes out, right? And then we run out as like champions holding our title belt, aka our first copy, first edition copy over our heads, right? People won't be excited about it because the gameplay experience isn't, I guess rewarding their expectations is a good word for it. Consider for a minute, Rian Johnson told us in his explanation for The Last Jedi, that wonderful movie that everyone everywhere loved forever, and we're still praising it today, right? Sarcasm. That's sarcasm. Okay, that's sarcasm. But let's remember, he said he wanted to usurp your expectations. And as I've said in previous videos, even about Assassin's Creed Shadows, you don't want to do that. You want to reward the audience's expectation, but surprise them in how you deliver that. Consider for a moment how thrilling Castlevania is, despite you knowing that you're eventually going to come face to face with Dracula, in whatever form his name takes, whether it's mirrored or forward. Okay? you're going to end up fighting Dracula. You know that as soon as you saddle up with Simon Belmont and start whipping the hell out of everything you come across and ripping chicken out of walls. All right? You know what you're going to get. And when it delivers that, you're like, whoa, right? That the Bloody Tears theme starts to play in the old 16-bit sound font, and man, your heart just goes through the roof, right? Now you can get a remix of that on YouTube, by the way. It's primo. Beautiful. Anyway, back to this guy. So what he's talking about is that experience of having his expectations rewarded. When you played that next Halo game, guess what happened? Master Chief kicks some ass. Just like the previous games, he kicks some ass. Guess what happened in Gears of War? He kicks some ass, right? You're not kicking ass in Star Wars Outlaws, as we saw that. You're just walking through a cinematic experience. Like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to beat the hell out of some stormtroopers? Bap! We'll see you in the next movie. You just slap him on the back of the helmet like he's got an off button on the top of his skull. You just bap on the top of the helmet and he's done. We saw that. It's thrilling gameplay. Thrilling gameplay. Very satisfying. Very satisfying. And that's what we're experiencing. That's what we're looking at, is that people aren't, they're not having their expectations rewarded, as I said. The audience expects to play a game like this. So if you are an outlaw in the Star Wars universe, you should first, at the very beginning of this, have a shootout. Your very first scene should be a shootout. The character should then have to fight for their lives for the remainder of the game. There should be no lull point. All right? If you are an outlaw and you are as capable as you say you are, you should be like, sort of like a John Wick situation. Consider what they missed out on here by not combining what we love about John Wick with the Star Wars universe, with someone like Han Solo, male or female. Let's say that they, remember what they did with RuneScape the other day. Let's say that they just changed body type A, body type B. My favorite part about that, right? If you don't know what I'm talking about, there was an update for RuneScape that just came out this week that changed the gender options and allowed you to declare a pronoun. This is the old RuneScape, the original, or at least the very early one. And so you are then like given the option of body type A and body type B. Now, the problem is that when you start removing these gender labels, you just have to add a priority to them. So body type A is then the preferred body type because it comes first. No longer is it male and female, who are just variations of a human being. You've now prioritized this one as the first one you want to list. The same with body type 1 and body type 2. The immediate implication is that this is the priority. This is the better one because it comes first. They don't think about that. It's weird, right? It's really weird. For those sexist fellas out there, it's really weird how they go so woke, they circle back to based, right? In your opinion, okay? I don't hate you. It takes a village to raise a child and all that jazz, so I understand, right? Everybody's got to have their corner. But I just wanted to point out, right? Think about that, right? Like they went all the way like, oh man, we want to remove the labels. We're just going to label women as inferior now. This is the second option you get. I mean, even red and blue would have been even more telling, right? Like, this is clearly the main character, and here's the, if you're not into that, option. But that's what we're dealing with, right? This is the experience they want to give you. They want you engaged in a cinematic, representative sort of, I think that's a word, it is now, representative kind of experience where you're feeling like the world you live in brought to life in front of you. Meanwhile, you're like, haha, Mega Man, go pew, pew, pew. Right? I mean, we all remember that. We all remember the experience of playing our first Pokemon game on our Game Boys that we couldn't see at night until you got that fancy system that looked like you were controlling some kind of bomb detonation device. That's really what it looked like, right? I mean, you had all the gizmos on your Game Boy, and man, it looked like you were ready to wage war. But that's what it was. It was the experience of having your expectations rewarded. When you played these old games, you expected to save the princess from Ganon in Zelda. That's what it was set up. When you were initially introduced to the plot at hand, Link's got to do shit. He's got stuff to do. Along the way, you're going to meet scary stuff like those weird skeletons that move really like, we're going to get you. Remember that? Like they're moving really slow and then they're like, ah, we're going to get you. But you don't get that experience in this anymore. You get the cinematic sort of theme park ride. You remember, oh gosh, I just forgot his name. The director that complained the Marvel movies are now a theme park ride. They're not Scorsese. He said that these Marvel movies aren't like cinematic experiences anymore. They're a theme park ride. Like, oh, look over here, look over there. Okay, it's time to get off the ride, you know? And that's what it is that you're dealing with a formula now. We're like, okay, we've got to put this much this in this presentation, and it's got to look like this or nobody's going to like it. Whereas in reality, as we even look at the indie market, I'll point out Among Us. Among Us is a very simplistic looking game, and yet we're still talking about it today. We're still seeing it referenced. We're still seeing it built off of. In fact, there's new games out that are built off the original premise of that expand upon it. And that's what we're looking at, is that people are taking advantage of these live service games where you can play with your friends, and they're building a cooperative environment, which is in fact the new gaming culture. Look at Roblox, look at Gary's Mod, look at all these games that you play now with your friends in a cooperative manner. That's what the new gaming culture is. What Nate is really kind of complaining about is that he's not part of that at the moment. Or it doesn't feel like that's his culture, I guess. And in reality, this is probably the best time to be a gamer because corporations are the weakest they have ever been in this market. Consider for a moment that Among Us, I keep bringing it up because it's very important. Among Us is a very, very popular game. It was started by an indie developer. Just a couple of folks that had an idea about playing a party game. And ta-da, it took over the world. Consider what Fortnite is. Fortnite built off of the success of Battlefield and COD and just sort of cartoonified it. But they built into it also a level of competitorship that didn't exist in the other two before. And that's where we're at, is sort of this community environment where high scores are compared to each other live. Skill is tested in front of an audience of whoever's in the arena with you. You form a brotherhood with people you're either routinely paired with or exist in a Discord with, and you all play together regularly. This is the kind of thing that is actually going on in gaming, where now more than ever, you don't need to bring your whole rig and go to a LAN party. You don't need to go to a convention to celebrate what you enjoy and engage with it. You can just do so in your underwear at your house. You can do so on a live stream in your underwear in your house, right? There's nothing stopping you. Just don't show the underwear part, unless you're a Twitch model, I guess. I don't know what goes over there. It's pretty freaky. But anyway, this is what Nadeshot's really explaining, is that he feels isolated from this. And that's what you hear in his like callbacks, like, man, I remember when we were excited about games. It's because the expectations are not being rewarded with these AAA, quadruple A games. Meanwhile, you slap a Roblox skin on and you could play GTA with your friends in an environment that's totally customized. Same thing with Gmod. You can go and you can enjoy these games like even GTA. I don't know if you know this. I like watching the GTA races. There's a whole racing culture on GTA. Rockstar accidentally built one of the best racing games out there. And they refuse to isolate that and release it as its own property. But it is fantastic what they're able to do with this. And there's a whole culture. They bet, they exchange money, they do pinks where they give cars or however it works. It's a very, very, very intense kind of like culture that's built into this now by accident that is a communal environment between PvP. And that's the future of all of this stuff. That's how the current gaming culture works. This is what people get excited for. I want to attract your attention to this. Remember, we've got Dead by Daylight and Five Nights at Freddy doing a team up, okay? This is important, okay? Because these are two games that swept sort of the Zoomer market, okay? And you can see the response to these people having like a really, really intense, happy, like, yes, finally a team up between the two kings of gaming horror, you know, Zoomer level, okay? Zoomers. And so you're dealing with like this environment where they're celebrating this game that's the Dead by Daylight game is a community game. You got to play it with your friends. It requires a group of people together. You may not be in the same voice chat or whatever, but it requires so many people being part of the lobby in order to play the game. Now, this combines the thrill of the Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare and really creepy backstory that went with that whole franchise, okay? And this is the kind of environment you're dealing with. You're dealing with this stuff where they're combining usually single-player-based games into a community environment. I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't see sort of like a new Mega Man game, a new, well, Pokemon is already doing the Pokemon Go thing, but you know, you see like some kind of like community environment built out of virtual reality, like that meta thing that Zuckerberg's obsessed with. You've also got Gundam. Gundam is working very hard to build in like a metaverse sort of attitude to their brand right now. They've done 3 anime so far that are based on virtual reality Gundams, okay? And so this is like an important time in gaming where we're shifting from the single player sitting in a room with his friends that are just, getting off the bus after school, enjoying pizza and soda, that kind of thing, to an environment that is physically isolated, which again has its drawbacks and also its pluses. I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend like 8 hours hanging out with a bunch of guys in a convention hall with uncomfortable seats and public bathrooms, okay? I don't have a problem hanging out in a voice chat for 8 hours, talking about and playing games with a bunch of people. Don't have a problem at all. And that's the difference, is that the level of investment allows for more people to participate in different things that they ordinarily wouldn't, How many people want to sit down and play Gartic Phone in real life to expose themselves to having like critique of their terrible art skills? Everybody's a judge of their art skills. And who wants to do that? But you'll go and you'll play it in a Discord voice chat with your friends. Absolutely. Because everybody's either on a level playing field or you're more open to that criticism because it's not face-to-face with you. Again, it's a different world. We're dealing with a different attitude about gaming. And if you want to know more about what I think about this, let me know down in the comments. I'd be more than happy to do a Japanese gaming theory versus American Western gaming theory video that explains like really what the dynamics are and why it's shifting so hard into the Japanese, Korean, Chinese model and out of the Western model so fast. All right, and I'm more than happy to explain that in another video because we've been going for more than a half an hour on this one. In any case, guys, if you've made it to the end, I wish you good luck out there, and we'll catch you in the next one.